Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Smarter Campus podcast, where we are changing education one conversation at a time. Today, I am lucky enough to be joined by Chris Agnew, an edtech entrepreneur, experiential learning evangelist, and the driving force behind Stanford's new generative AI for education hub. Chris, thank you so much for being here. I'd love if you could tell people a little bit more about yourself, and we can jump in.
Hey, Zach, I am so happy to be here. You did a very generous intro there. Like you said, I'm Chris. I've spent my entire career in education, and I started at Stanford University about just over a year ago to launch our new generative AI for education hub, where we aim to be a trusted source for education system leaders on what's working and what's not in trying to leverage AI to benefit students and schools and learning.
Great. So, how'd you get into the whole AI thing?
I took a non-traditional path, which I think maybe something unique about AI as a type of technology is more so than some other tech booms. I think it attracts people of different backgrounds. So, a little bit about me. I've worked my entire career in education. And Uh, for many years, I rode this pendulum swing across two types of education that fluctuated within the year. I would spend part of my year working in non-traditional learning environments, taking both secondary age students and also post-secondary age students to learn skills in non-traditional classrooms. So think learning um, through study abroad type programs, learning in the outdoors, learning in curriculum. I worked for many years through an organization called the National Outdoor Leadership School, teaching leadership through extended wilderness expeditions. And then I would spend the other half of my year teaching in more formal learning environments. So think classroom in a K-12 type setting, learning more academic settings. What I was trying to do, trying to intuit my way through, was how to bring together these hands-on learning through experience, often learning the things we really care about, the durable skills, the communication, the critical thinking, in these non-traditional learning environments, tapping the best of that, but then also bringing in the more kind of quote unquote rigor academic learning that we all need as well, foundational literacy, math, etc. So did that for a bunch of years. Um, and went to graduate school trying to find a marriage of these two worlds, trying to make learning in a more formal setting more relevant and hands-on and applied. In 2015, I started leading an organization called the Teton Science Schools. Teton Science Schools had a K-12 lab school. It supported school groups from around the country to learn next generation science standards in the national parks. And it had a graduate school for education that trained teachers to teach in this format. In many ways, I thought I had arrived. This was the place to marry these two things together. And partially that was true.
Yeah.
Um, that Teton Science Schools was headquartered in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Jackson is one of the wealthiest zip codes in the country. And it relied on great philanthropy to make this learning happen. And even something I learned was even through very generous philanthropy
Yeah.
in one of the most wealthy zip codes in the country, there was still not a clear path to create these immersive learning experiences that all kids deserve at scale where it was accessible to all kids.
Yeah.
And that business model was broken. There wasn't a path for that. And so in early 2021, I left that looking for a better way to do it. And I recognized, this is in first half of COVID. So digital learning was exploding. Kids were in a virtual learning environment. I didn't think the answer was sending kids to only digital learning. But I did think technology has to play a role to reduce cost and increase access to these learning environments that we all know need to play a growing part in kids' formal learning experiences.
Yeah.
So I spent a couple of years working for two venture-backed ed tech companies. I was not a tech person at all previous to this. Through these experiences, both of these venture-backed ed tech companies, learned a lot about, worked on the product side in both, and learned a lot about building more immersive learning experiences that were tech enabled.
Yeah.
And in my second role, I was at this company called Multiverse that used apprenticeships as an alternative to university, and was on the early team that entered the US market to bring this UK company to as an alternative to higher ed in the US.
Yeah.
And while there, ChatGPT was released. And through that, we started building some AI into our products and stumbled upon kind of an early use case. So using apprenticeships as a model or as an alternative to university, students would be placed in apprenticeships, learn skills, and the vision was could ultimately, through work, earn a degree. And while doing that, get paid the whole time, and learn valuable skills. All of their assignments and work were real deliverables for their job.
Okay.
Apprenticeship coaches spent a significant amount of their time assessing student work for learning outcomes because each student assignment was different based on their role at the company. And we rolled out a product, a very early stage product that helped apprentices speed their assessment of student work through the use of generative AI. And I had this unlock at that point of, oh, AI, this very kind of future forward technology could actually showed potential to enable these more ancient or evergreen forms of learning that got learners out doing real work, hands-on in the real world, but could enable it at scale in a modern context. So that's my bridge from like nature-based learning to learning enabled by artificial intelligence.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's so much to really break down there. But the thing that I think really is like enlightening for people to see, right, is that you were trying to teach students real skills in real world environments, right? And that transition from the outdoors into moving into like, oh, wow, this whole AI thing can be really helpful. So where did you see that AI like empower real experiences that you kind of were offering in those like outdoors and AI is often opposites, right? Most people wouldn't think they correlate.
Right.
But I think you're highlighting that there is a very similar capability, right? So like where would you see that's taken you so far?
Well, I'll give two really tangible examples
Yeah.
of ways it shows promise.
Okay.
One is these more immersive, non-traditional learning environment settings, whether that's project-based learning, field trips, or classrooms that are outside of four walls. All of those can be operationally complex. There's a lot of details to figure out, whether it's permission slips, whether it's transportation, lots of nuts and bolts, operationally complicated details. AI can help with those things and reduce burden for teachers in those realms. So that's one very tangible way. There's like detailed ways we can unpack that, but at a high level, solve operational challenges. Second one, and this is, again, I can't emphasize enough, shows promise,
Mhm.
yet to like definitive research on it. Uh, for a number of years, there has been increasing urgency around how we help young people build durable skills for their future life, future work, etc. And it's not just about what math score you gained on the SAT as a future determiner of success, but how well you are able to collaborate, work in a team, think critically, and problem solve. I think most educators can agree these are the things that we really care about in developing in young people. And there are no good ways to assess this at scale. It is often I know it when I see it in young people. Uh, and as we know, what gets measured gets managed for. What we can measure, we can optimize for. And so until we can measure these things, we really say we want to focus on these durable skills. It will be harder to actually truly have a greater focus on developing these durable skills at a system-wide scale. And so AI shows potential in being able to assess and coach students at scale in development of these skills.
Okay. One thing I really like that you're saying that a lot of people leave out, in my opinion, is a lot of people just jump to the conclusion that AI can do X, Y, and Z. It's going to change X, Y, and Z, right? But you've said shows promise, shows potential. Can you kind of dive into why you're talking like in, say, show promise rather than like making claims that it is doing these things?
So we launched the Generative AI for Education Hub in January. That is 9 months ago.
Sure.
And our goal is to help bring research to education system leaders. So bring it to practitioners to help inform their practice. We are in the nascent stages for AI K-12 research. Right now, I would encourage listeners to go visit the Generative AI for Education Hub at Stanford's research repository. This is a location where we update monthly. It holds all the research that exists relevant to AI in K-12. You can search for different categories, filter on what papers do exist. And last I checked, which was last month, we're in the midst of our September update, there were only 36 randomized control trials related to AI and education, broadly speaking, that were relevant to K-12. So this could be one RCT on tutoring. This could be a different RCT on teacher feedback, but it's across the whole board. So, and for those that don't know this acronym RCT, randomized control trials. So this is the gold standard when we want to determine efficacy of some sort of practice in education. So 36, the number's tiny. We know so little right now. And so I try and be very clear that what shows promise, but there's no data. What maybe is in an early stage and there shows some promise because there are a little bit of research to back it up. And then also on the flip side, what areas of AI show potential harm or demonstrated harm for young people right now.
Well, I mean, I think that's like such an important topic, kind of, that a lot of people are, kind of jamming AI down other people's throats, is what I like to say. So, one thing that I think you're doing very well that is very important for people to understand is how do you like push progression while also understanding risk without understanding, if that makes sense? It's kind of a jumbled question.
Yeah, no, I think I'll frame it this way. Uh, there are three ways that educators might want the three whys behind educators' adoption of AI. This is what we find in lots of conversations with education system leaders and teachers across the country. The first why they might want to adopt it would be as an efficiency play. Can it speed X process up? Can we save teachers X amount of time per week? Can we give teachers their weekends back? It's the efficiency play. This is often kind of the entry or baseline reason why schools might enter into this. The next reason is often why we get into this. It's can we use AI to improve student learning or improve student outcomes? Can we move the needle on the things we really care about? Can we improve student math learning, high school math outcomes through AI learning platforms? And then the third category is the reimagining case. So can we use AI to reimagine what is possible in our learning settings, what is possible with learning, broadly speaking? This sets up a tension right now that I think gets a little bit to your question. Most of AI products right now, virtually all, live in the private sector, and most are venture-backed. That means they need to prove up and ultimately provide a return on that initial investment. That makes sense. It is easier to sell into an existing market, which means it is easier to sell into our current education system and optimize our current system, which I think many can agree is a current flawed system, and just use AI to speed up what we're already doing. If we only do that, what a missed opportunity. And part of our charge and what we're constantly keeping our eyes open for and to spotlight is research around and opportunities to look at AI that is reimagining what's possible, which part of doing that is creating a new market or space or school design, et cetera. How can AI rethink how humans engage with the world around them to learn?
Okay. So I think like everything's kind of tying together, right? Like it's reimagining. You started with the reimagining, doing things outdoor school, kind of stuff like that. So how do you like empower teachers that are overworked and underpaid, right? To like not just jump to that efficiency thing? Because I totally agree with you. The flaw in the AI education system is just trying to do the same thing that wasn't really working faster, easier, more efficiently. So how are you taking them like, hey, this is probably where you can start because it'll help you understand what we're doing, to then like, okay, we need to flip the script. Like how do you empower them to do that?
So in talking to superintendents, which we see as our target audience, so we're thinking on a system-wide level on like systems of schools,
Yep.
often think of it in three different kind of very tangible steps. One is understand, and this is often in tight alignment with the CTO of a district, make sure your policy, privacy, security is tight.
Okay.
And as far as your procurement, what you're buying, what new products that you're bringing in, and exposures that potentially exposes to student data, to your district, et cetera. So like one area of focus, often delegated to the CTO, of ensuring policy, privacy, security. That's one category. Related to teaching and learning. Next step, there's often in any school district, in any school, there's a smaller group of teachers, educators that are leaning in and are excited to experiment and play around and look at that as an asset rather than a burden. So embrace that and get together a group of early adopters that can help district leadership see the future in many ways, kind of pull it forward and help district leaders kind of see around corners and what's coming, because this group is playing around and experimenting what AI might mean for this district. This, my hope would be, this starts to get in the realm of like reimagining at the classroom or school level, but within the system. And the last category, and this is just to make the existing world tangible and get people's feet wet, encourage system leaders to come up with one problem that they're grappling with that is discrete. It has like clear boundaries. It might require 2 to 4 months, a semester length of time to tackle. It often is in like the back end office realm, so it is in the kind of efficiency realm. But try and bring AI to tackle that topic to do a couple different things: solve a real problem,
Yep.
and I think almost more importantly for school districts, flex their innovation muscle that might not be regularly exercised, and start to get a sense of like, oh, we've had this problem. How can you all get creative with this new technology and try and solve it in this kind of rapid cycle, iterative, kind of near term process?
Hmm.
It gets your feet wet with this new technology. You can gain some fluency, and then you can start to build some momentum.
Okay. So, I mean, I really like everything you said there. And one thing that I think is very hard for school districts and super cool what you're doing and like helping them along with that brings back to the point on what you were talking about with like most startups are VC backed, right? Or someone gave them money that they need to, in some way, shape, or form, give that money back, right? And teachers are often like on the blunt end of marketing, students are on the blunt end of marketing and things like that. So, how do you like help teachers kind of understand that they are being sold a business, but in a sense, too, to kind of be open minded to that, like flexing their innovation muscle, I guess, if that makes sense?
Um, I'll flip your question a little bit, and I think what's most important, and especially ed techs, it's important for ed techs to recognize the point we're in, which several things are converging at the same time. Of we've come out of COVID, which was heavy digital, uh, um, a large digital component in the learning environment. So there's an overhang and fatigue of that. There is growing research and fatigue on the societal impacts of social media, specifically on young people. And there's this growing kind of discontent at some points with like big tech and its influence. Uh, and For technology companies that are engaging with districts, instead of like convincing them of a need, I think what's most important is spending time listening to the real experiences of teachers today. Like, what does it look like to manage 150 kids across a school day, across 5 or 6 different periods? And like, what does that look like in practice? Because so many um, ed tech products, kind of quote unquote, in the lab or in like unreal settings, can in theory look shiny and seamless and magical. Um, but when in practice, it's not solving real problems for teachers, or most importantly, it's not helping kids accomplish what we want for them.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's such a like just it's such an interesting concept, right? Because it's a business, but that business could actually cause major societal problems. And that's what I think a lot of people don't necessarily talk about, right? It's that like we're at a very pivotal time in like history, in my personal opinion, when it's like I think what you said is so not talked about enough with COVID, right? It's like kind of a weird perfect storm, is what I like to say, where COVID happened and then ChatGPT happened. And it was just this weird transition to where everything changed and then everything changed again. And like it's weird. People kind of like lost, like, especially in higher education. I know you don't necessarily focus there, but like I feel like there was a lot of like loss of excitement of learning, right? Because everyone's tired and no one wants to learn online, and then ChatGPT can do all my homework, and people don't necessarily worry about that. So, like, I mean, I think you really just answered this question, but I mean, it's like, what are you guys kind of doing to like, do you find that like acknowledging that kind of helps people move forward, I guess?
Uh, I mean, I certainly hear it
Right.
from teachers regularly, that skepticism or cynicism, which is well deserved,
Yeah.
right? Of like, uh, the concept of let me stop you right there. I've talked to X amount of ed techs that have been trying to sell me something into my classroom. Like I know what I need, or I know what I don't need because I've experienced it several times before. And there's a built up level of disappointment where um, education, different than say experimentation um, in e um, like Amazon world, like
Yeah.
buying stuff, e-commerce. That's the word I'm looking for. Rather different than experimentation in e-commerce, where somebody gets their Cliff Bars in the mail a few days later than they wanted because something didn't work right. You know, a kid gets second grade once, and if they have gaps in their learning because of a failed launch, then those gaps have the potential to persist for years and then prevent further things to be built on top of that. So innovation in education is essential, and teachers are smart to want to innovate in ways that uh, help kids and help improve the education system, but don't that do no harm as well.
Yeah, because and I think that's such a good point. It's that like teachers care. You know what I mean? Like they want their students to, and I think what you said, I've never really heard people talk about. And I think it's such a good point that like a kid gets second grade once, and if a teacher tries a product, that could change that kid's life if it doesn't go well. Like that could snowball so hard down the line. So like kind of coming up on time here, how do you then like, I'm trying to think how to phrase this question. Like how do you like help with them? I guess like how do you like how are they feeling, right? Like how do you teach them to kind of innovate but also not get sold? I guess that's a bad question, but
Well, I think um, it's um, and they being teachers
yeah, like
or
because
they being
I don't know. I'm gonna rephrase that completely. Like what we were
yeah,
saying is that like it can cause students huge problems if they do
yeah.
something isn't necessarily tested. And it's kind of wrapping everything up, which is kind of cool, is that like you were saying, it's important to be able to innovate, but also be able to prove that that innovation leads to like growth in a student, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so like I think what you're doing with the generative AI lab at Stanford is the answer to my question, really, right? It's that
Yeah.
you're doing a lot of that heavy lifting for them. So I'm changing the question to like what results have you seen when you empower them that you kind of help them do that heavy lifting?
I mean, I love that question, and I think it can be a way that districts, most importantly, but also ed techs can feel like they're both learning through the process. Is we a core part of what we do is do research on AI's impact in schools, and to do that, to do efficacy research, typically involves a couple key partners. It involves a product to research that has certain practices, so an ed tech product, technology product. And then it also involves a district or a state that is rolling that out, but wants to better and more deeply understand efficacy. Um, and so we work with both of those through research partnerships to understand what effective use looks like, how we can more effectively encourage use that has positive impact, that can lead to what our ultimate goal is: scaling effective practices and making sure those effective practices don't live in that single elementary school in the district that's always getting amazing outcomes, um, but actually can be spread across the district, across the state, and impact more kids for the better.
Well, I mean, I think it's amazing what you're doing. I learned a lot about what you're doing from this, which is just super cool. And there's just so much misunderstanding, I think, and there's so much business involved in things that necessarily shouldn't have business involved in them. With a price tag outcome is kind of what I'm saying. It's just really interesting. So, last question I kind of want to wrap up here is like, if you could snap your fingers and change one thing about this whole system, what would change at the end of the fingers being snapped?
Uh, well, something I feel like when I was 22, hungry to have an impact in education, I was just graduated from college, that even feels more urgent today is, and more within grasp today too, is uh, reimagining what learning for young people looks like. Um, and that formal learning looks a lot more like life and a lot less like highly industrialized product that it or process that it has been for the last 150 years. It looks a lot more like multi-age grouping, with kids interacting with other kids of different ages, not just kids within their 6 month time span, and kids interacting more with different adults, not just teachers, with a lot less learning in isolation or kids like hyper grade tracked. It looks like learning that has a lot more application in the real world and a lot more experimentation, like kids experimenting on where their skills are, where they need to learn more, and a lot less memorization. And lastly, like a lot more time learning outside of the physical school. So learning more in community, in nature, learning more in workplaces, and less time learning in the four walls of a classroom. So that would be like, if I snapped my fingers and went to schools and they looked a lot more like that, all set.
Yeah,
Life
it's
is good.
it's it's funny. I always joke like I got some internships in college, and I think it's funny that you wait to college to have an internship for it to be like normal to have an internship. You know what I mean? And it's like
Right.
I did construction in high school and learned more from that than I would argue that I learned from any job or classroom that I ever had. And it's just a funny, the like social perception around that is such an interesting, I don't know,
Right.
like
You go to, it can be sometimes of like, quote, going to school to check a box. And then I go to these other places to really learn. And whether that's like my after school job or that internship or that STEM club
yep.
or 4-H that happens outside of school, where the real learning happens. And if we could blur those lines, um, wouldn't that be amazing?
That would be amazing. So, last question. This is my favorite one. What's your favorite way to use AI outside of classroom work? I love to use it for cooking. That's my example.
Oh, what I'm using it for right now, and talk to me next week to see if the test actually had any impact. But I'm training for this gravel bike race in rural central Wyoming that happens on Saturday, and I've been doing it like most of the summer, training for it.
Yep.
Um, and I have a chat thread in ChatGPT where I've told it, I gave it the race profile and stats. I gave it my performance data from the two previous times I've done the race, and then set my time goal that I want to hit for the race. Each time I have a training ride, I give the conversation like the results of my training ride, like the Strava
Yep.
stats.
Yeah.
And then it recalibrates my training plan for the next week, and it tells me what I do tomorrow, like how long of a ride, what the training cycle should be, like what my power out should be, et cetera, et cetera. And there's two worlds that will be tested on Saturday. There's one world where it was telling me all this information with great confidence, which actually led me nowhere, or I'll do better than I ever have in this race because I had my own personalized cycling coach that I've never had before. So TBD.
That is amazing. And we will post the results of the race with this podcast. Yeah.
Uh-oh, you're making me nervous.
Yeah. But Chris, thank you so much. This was so much fun. I learned a lot. Any lasting thoughts before we wrap up?
I'd encourage people, like I said earlier, check out the research repository on our website. And if that interests you, then you can also subscribe to our monthly newsletter. We won't spam you, only 12 times a year, but you'll get new research and how it's relevant to K-12 system leaders.
Great. And I will have all of that information in the bio of all the places posted for this. So everyone listening, thank you so much. And we will see you next week. Chris, thank you for everything. I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you, Zach.